webinar about the basics of Revit Lookup tables and just a starting overview of how they work and an explanation of the concepts. So my name's Brendan Upton. I'm one of the technical consultants here at A2K Technologies on the Revit MEP side. So that's my basic background there. Alright, so just an agenda that we're going to go through. We'll just do a quick summary and some key learning aspects of this webinar. We'll go through the concepts of lookup tables, so get into the bit of the nitty-gritty. Also the formatting of lookup tables. We'll explain a little bit about that and the concepts of the formatting and how that is important. How Revit families use lookup tables, how they reference in. And then we'll do a bit of a live demo just to quickly show you and put into a bit of practice what we're talking about. All right. So just a quick summary overview of what we're going to be looking at. So this webinar is going to be showing you specifically or mainly focused on the Revit MEP side of things. So in Revit MEP, the software uses lookup tables to automatically size pipe, conduit, and cable tray fittings. So we're going to have a look at how these lookup tables are formatted and how they are referenced in. And we're hopefully going to be able to better understand the role of these lookup tables and how they can increase the workflow and automate a bit of the process. And so hopefully you can understand in the back end how the formulas are working and with these custom families. So the key learning aspects that we're going to get out of this webinar is to identify and describe the concepts behind the lookup tables, the benefits to the design process, how they can speed up the process and how they can streamline when you're modelling of pipe and conduit, etc. We'll have a quick look at how you'll perhaps start to be able to create custom families that reference lookup tables and how you can utilise them a little bit further in your own projects and families. We'll have a look at and explain a bit about the formulas in lookup tables and how they work, how they're formatted, and understand how the lookup tables improve the workflows. Alrighty, so first things first, the concepts of the lookup table. So lookup tables in Revit are a .csv file, a comma-separated value file. Okay, there's an example of one on the screen here, just a screenshot that you can see. Okay, lookup tables can be opened in and edited in Excel. That's the best practice to edit them in Excel. It's certainly the easiest way to reference them in terms of working in columns and rows. Okay, they can be opened and edited in programs like Notepad, I guess it should be said, but the best practice is to be working in Excel. That's where it'll make more sense and the formatting will actually suit it a lot better. So as you can see here, a typical lookup table just consists of, it opened up in an Excel format, just consists of what you would expect, your rows and columns. So there's a little bit about the formatting and that there that you can see. So let's get into a bit of that and explain a bit about what's happening with the formatting here. Okay, so the column types in a lookup table is quite important. So let's just have a bit of a explanation about how they work. Okay, so I've highlighted a few of the sections here in this screenshot. Okay, so the first column, or column A, as it is here on the screen, is referred to as the reference column. So the reference column, and note that in the header it's blank. Okay, so the reference column and the values within the reference column are purely that. They are just a reference. They have nothing to do with the formulas or with the values that are being looked up or that are being presented or are being used from a lookup table. They're purely there for the user's reference, for your reference, and they have no bearing on the formulas or the other values in the lookup table itself. So usually this reference column and the values within this reference column is just given a name that represents what that column is looking for. So In this case, this is a lookup value that's looking for a nominal diameter, and it's sizes basically. So you can see that logically the reference is just a size that corresponds to the size that is being looked up, but it can be any value in there that you can input whatever you want. So just repeating that has no reference to the lookup table itself. It's just a reference for the user. The next column, the second column in the lookup table, is referred to as the lookup value. So this is the value that is looking for a value in a parameter inside of the family. So once we go and have a look at the family, we'll start to understand where that lookup value is where it's looking and where it's coming from, and how it works within the formula. So the lookup value is the value of the parameter that it's looking for. And then after the lookup value column, all of subsequent columns after that are referred to as basically lookup columns, and these are the values that are to be used or placed into the family if the right conditions are found. Okay, so you can have any number of columns here. It doesn't really matter how big you go, but just keep in mind that each of these columns after the first lookup value column is referred to as a lookup column, and these values are used to be pushed into the family reference once a lookup value or a corresponding lookup value has been found on that row. Okay. All right. So let's try and explain that a little bit clearer. Okay. So we'll come across to the next slide here. All right. So there's a little bit to be understood about the formatting of your lookup tables. Okay. So the top row is referred to as the header, and as I mentioned, the reference column does not have a header. It's left blank. Okay. You can see in this example, as I mentioned, the reference can be whatever the user desires. So you can see in this example that they've put some obviously some size references there, but again has no bearing on the use of the values in the project or in the family itself. Okay. So moving across to the next columns, okay, the formatting for the headers, okay, is important. Okay, so you need to get the formatting correct here. This is an example of this is an example here of the formatting that needs to be in place. So it's parameter name, parameter type, and parameter units, and they're separated by your two hash marks. Okay, if you don't get that formatting correct, then it's not going to work. So it's important to get the formatting of that header correct. Okay. So note that there are two hash symbols between each part of the column header. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and that's just the standard formatting that these lookup tables use. That's the typical way that it's been set up. One thing to keep in mind here is that the naming of the parameter name here does not necessarily reflect the actual name of the parameter coming from the family. This can be an abbreviation. Okay, so this is where it can start to become a bit confusing. So we'll go into this in a bit more detail in a moment, but this is where it can start to become a little bit confusing. But this name here, or this parameter name, is not necessarily the correct or the case sensitive or the exact parameter name that's coming from the family. This can be an abbreviation. The thing to keep in mind with lookup tables is that this first lookup value column, okay, is looking for it's not looking for a parameter name as such. It's not looking for this parameter name. It's just a reference to tell the user that is what parameter it is. The formula that we'll see in a sec that the lookup tables use is looking for that value in that column, so in that first column basically. So just keep in mind not to get confused when you open up and start to edit lookup tables. You might notice that you've got these parameter names here, but they might not necessarily reflect the names of the parameters in your family. Okay, so it's a little bit dissimilar to when you're working with formulas in families. You know, you use this parameter versus that parameter, and it's all case sensitive, and you've got to get the parameter names correct. With lookup tables, it's a little bit different in that sense that it's not referring a parameter to a parameter. It's kind of referring a parameter to a column placement, and that column placement is that first column that is the important column for the lookup value. All right, so let's keep moving and see if we can drill into this a bit further. Okay, so just some things to note here before we move on, that the units don't need to be consistent in a lookup table. Okay, so you can have both millimeters and inches, and if I just go back one, you can see that in this example here I actually have inches and millimeters in this one lookup table. Okay, so the units don't need to be consistent. You can have both millimeters and inches, for example, in the one lookup table. What will happen is that when Revit uses this lookup table in a family, it will convert any of the units to the actual project units that are being used within that project at that time. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The other thing to note here before we move on as well is to make sure that you don't confuse lookup tables with type catalogs. Okay, this can happen quite a bit. I've seen it happen before. Don't confuse them with type catalogs. Type catalogs are a separate thing. Type catalogs are used for sizing of family and family types to bring those types into a project and pick from a list from a catalog basically. So that's the size and the types of the families. These lookup tables are actually controlling certain parameters and sizing of certain parameters within a family. Okay. So some further things to note here before we move on with regards to how the lookup tables are referenced. Okay. If you are using Revit 2014 and onwards, you might, and you've never used anything before 2014, then you might not have experienced this. But prior to 2014, the lookup tables were not embedded into the family as such. Okay, they needed to be saved as that CSV file inside the lookup table folder in your system that is being referred to by the Revit INI file in your for your software, for your Revit software. So in your Revit INI file prior to 2014, there was a string there for lookup table location, and that lookup table location would be on your local drive somewhere, or wherever it may be. That lookup table location will be referenced in that INI file, and then those CSV files would be saved in that location, and then once you open up a project and use your fittings, it would need to be referenced to that lookup table, and reference it and look inside that lookup table folder to find the correct and corresponding lookup table. From 2014 onwards, Autodesk decided to make it a bit easier. I think mostly by popular demand. Is a bit of a wish list because of having to send these files separately. So from 2014 onwards, the lookup tables are embedded inside the family itself. So you've got in the family types, you've got a manage button. You've got under lookup tables, you've got a manage button where you can actually click in and import in the actual CSV lookup table and basically embed it in that family. So that when that family or a project full of families with those lookup tables gets sent anywhere, or you email a family to someone, or you send it outside of your office, that lookup table will go with it. I'm sure there are some of you there that have experienced prior to 2014 where you've sent content or families to other people or projects, and they'll come back to you and say, we're getting a message saying that there's lookup tables or CSV files that are missing. What's going on? And that's the reason for that is that prior to 2014, those CSV files were external to the family and needed to be sent along with the Revit content. Okay, or sent along with but separately. So and then that user at the other end would need to put those in their lookup table folder so that they could then be referenced when they open up the program. So in short, it's the process has been refined a bit from 2014 onwards. It just makes it a bit easier that you can actually just embed them into your families and just make sure that they always go along with them. So there is inside the Manage Lookup Tables window, there is a couple of features. You can actually obviously import in and save. That's how you save and embed your file in there. You can override at any time, import another one in, or you can export. You can open up a family and export out. So if you receive some content that has some lookup tables being used in there, you could open up that family, edit the family types, and click the export button, go into the Manage Lookup Tables, click the export button, and export that back out to a CSV file and save it on your system. You would do that if you needed to edit the CSV file anyway, and then import it back in if there was something that wasn't working. All right. So just recapping that, so lookup tables can be exported out of 2014 and saved back to the CSV format. Okay. It's important to note, in case you're wondering, when you are upgrading, if you are in a situation where you are upgrading from 2013 to 2014, a project from Revit 2014 to Revit upgrading a project from Revit 2013 to Revit 2014, the lookup tables will automatically be embedded into the 2014 conversion, okay? But it's important to note that that is provided that the lookup table, those CSV files are in that correct location coming from the 2013 side. So making sure that they're in the lookup table folder that is being referenced in the 2013 version. If they're there and then you upgrade and open up 2014, they should embed themselves and upgrade. And I'm sure a lot of you have obviously seen when you get that upgrade process, when you open up an older version of a Revit of a family or of a project inside a newer version of the software, you'll get your upgrade little message. And during that process, that's what, if there's lookup tables involved, that's what one thing that it'll be doing in the background there. So it'll be grabbing those lookup tables and embedding them into the new 2014 version. So just recapping, there's no need to maintain those lookup tables from 2014 in a folder, in a separate folder. All right, so let's start to have a bit of a look now at how the formulas start to work and how you can actually start to reference these lookup tables once you have created the CSV file, okay, or once you have a CSV file. So the CSV file gets put into a family, okay, and you create a parameter. This is the typical way to do it. So you create a parameter called lookup table name, and in the value of that parameter, it's just a text parameter, okay. In the value of that parameter, you place the name of the CSV file, of the lookup table CSV file, exactly case sensitive without the .csv file extension. Okay, so it's important to note that that is actually case sensitive. Okay, so you want to make sure that that you get it right there. Okay. One thing that I would suggest in terms of all of this talk about doing this portion of this exercise is case sensitive. When you do this value, this part is not case sensitive. Don't worry. I would suggest that you just go by the rule that everything is case sensitive, and whenever you're filling out these things within Revit, just try and get the names to match exactly with spaces, with cases, and symbols. Just make sure that they match. That way, you should hopefully never get into trouble. Because I'm sure you're aware that with your formulas in Revit families, you've got to make sure that they are exactly case sensitive and exactly character match of the parameter name themselves. Okay, otherwise it breaks apart and doesn't work. So I would just suggest that. Okay, so once you've got the lookup table name parameter and you're referencing the lookup table CSV file in the value of that parameter, you then need to tell the family how to use it. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look at how that formula actually works. Okay. So the lookup table can be referenced in parameter values. Okay, so a parameter can have a formula that is referencing or looking for that lookup table to use, okay? And there's a specific formula that is used, okay, to reference these lookup tables, and that formula is this one here, okay? So this line here is, okay, size underscore lookup, lookup table name, comma, lookup column, default if not found, lookup value, okay? All right, so that's all well and good, but what does that mean, okay? So a little bit confusing. So let's just break it down a bit more in plain terms. Okay, basically what the formula is saying is that we are telling Revit to go and look in the lookup table name. So go and find the CSV file that's referenced in that lookup table name. Okay, look for a column that is called whatever is in the lookup columns, okay, being referenced in the formula. Okay. And return the value from that column if it corresponds or if it matches with a lookup value in that first lookup value column or row. Okay, so if it finds a matching value in the lookup value row, it will return the value of the lookup column back to that parameter. Okay, if there is no match, if it doesn't find a match, then that's where that default if not found comes in. Okay, if there's no match, then it will return that default if not found value. All right, so let's see this a little bit more on the screen here in action in terms of family formulas and the CSV lookup table itself and how it's working. Okay, and we'll break down that formula and explain how it's actually getting the answer. Okay, all right. So on the screen here, this is an example of a lookup table with a single lookup value. Okay, it's just using one lookup value to reference, and it's working on that. Okay, all right. So you can see that this graphic here is the family types dialog box from this particular family. Okay, so this is a pipe elbow family, just for your information. Okay, so this graphic here is the family types. Okay. Dialog box where we can see all the family parameters and the parameters that are in that family there. Okay, this graphic over the top here, this screenshot is the CSV lookup table file. Okay, so you can see here that we've got lookup table name elbow-plane-abs. So that's the lookup table name, the CSV file. Okay, so we can see that this CSV file here is called elbow-plane-abs.csv. Okay, so that is the CSV file that it's looking for. Okay, so if we now come back up to an example here of one of these formulas. Okay, so you've probably opened up a family before and seen all of these size lookup formulas. Okay, we've got an example here of this socket depth parameter. Okay, so the formula for this socket depth parameter is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, it's using this lookup table. So it's size lookup table name. So it's looking for this lookup table name, elbow plane ABS. So it's looking inside of this CSV file here. It's looking for a column called SDPT. Okay. So that is this column here. Okay. So it's looking for that lookup column. Okay. So that's the value that it's going to push in if it finds a match. Okay. It then comes to the end of the formula here and says, right, match me the nominal diameter. So whatever the nominal diameter of this family is, we can see here that the nominal diameter at the moment is 10. Okay. So in the lookup table, find me the nominal diameter, which is 10. Okay. So it's finding me that one there. Okay, so it looks through the CSV file and it finds in the lookup column, in the lookup value, the first column there, it's finding the value 10 for nominal diameter. Okay, if it matches, then it's going to report the value for that SDP. So yes, that is 10. So it comes across and it says, all right, that's 14. So that's going to make that socket depth there 14, which I've highlighted there, as you can see. Okay, if it didn't find a 10, a value that matched, so if this was 10 and there was no value of 10 in this column, then it would it would go back to that default value. So that default value is that middle formula in the middle there. So if it didn't find 10, it wouldn't make it 14. It would make it 0.49 times the nominal diameter plus 11.7. Okay, so that default value can be a single value. It can be a formula within itself. It can be any number of it doesn't just have to be a single value. It can be a formula. So sometimes these lookup table formulas on a whole can be quite long because the default value being specified in the middle of the formula is actually in a formula in itself. Okay, and it can be quite a long one, so it expands it out a bit. Okay, so just a couple of things to note there. Okay, so again, I just want to emphasize, just make sure that you keep in mind that you might be wondering, okay, this is looking for nominal diameter, okay, and how does it know to go to this first column? Okay, so again, it's all to do with the order of this formula, and it's all to do with the order of your columns here. Okay, so that first column is always going to be the lookup value. Okay, and in your lookup table formula here, the last part of the formula, which says nominal diameter, that is the lookup value that it's looking for. Okay, so it comes to my family parameters here and says, right, the nominal diameter is 10. Inside of my CSV file, look for the lookup value, which Revit knows is the very first column after the reference column there. It's the very first column there. And the user here has just created this as ND, okay, which is just a reference to nominal diameter, but it's not a match because it's using the order of the columns. It's not using a match of the name, basically. So this is where the lookup tables can become a bit confusing, as I mentioned. So I'll probably sort of emphasize that again before the end of this, but just keep in mind that it's looking for the column position, okay? The column positions are important, or the first column essentially anyway is important, and that's always going to be the lookup value, okay? All right. Okay, so you can have examples of lookup tables that are using multiple values. Okay, so here's a quick example of one that's using multiple values. Okay, for the lookup value. Okay, so the formula for this example here says size lookup, and this time in the formula it doesn't have lookup table name. We don't have a lookup table name in this example here. Okay. In the parameters, we just have the name of the CSV file itself. Okay, so the CSV file here is 0711.csv. So there is the name of that CSV file there within the formula. Okay, so you can do it either way in terms of finding the name of the lookup table itself. So just keep that in mind. The reason why it's sometimes better to do it as the lookup table text name is because you can then easily, if that name changes, you then only have to change it in one spot, and all of your formulas will change to suit, because they're all just referencing that lookup table name, rather than having to go into each formula and change this 0771 to a different name if that CSV file gets changed, if the name gets changed. Okay. So moving on, so this formula for this sleeve length parameter is looking inside of that CSV file 0711. Okay, let's go right to the end of the formula. We can see here that we've got two parameters here now. We've got nominal diameter 1 and nominal diameter 2. Okay, so we've got two lookup values here. Okay, so again, this is where the order of the columns come in. Okay, so whichever are the first columns after the reference column in the lookup table, they will be the lookup values. So nominal diameter 1 and nominal diameter 2. Again, it's not looking for a match of the name here. It's looking just to see that, okay, yep, there is a column here, so that first one is going to match up to that one. The next column after that is going to be the next lookup value, which is going to match nominal diameter 2. Okay, and then the user have just created end diameter 1, abbreviated a bit just so that it's a bit so it's clear to see and it don't have too long names there. Okay, so it's looking for those two values. Once it's found those, okay, it's then looking for a matching value, okay, inside for those two values, and if it finds them, it's then going to report the value of this SL. Okay, so we come down here to the SL column, and it's 14.9. It's then going to report that value for this sleeve length parameter. If it doesn't find a matching two matching parameters in this order, okay, it will put a default, and here it's actually set to 0. So this family is an example of where it's set to say, to actually give the user pretty much an error if it's not going to work, which will tell it the lookup table is not working properly. So it's controlling it so that it can't really be any other sizes. It has to be working from the lookup table. Otherwise, I'll just get 0, which will potentially break the, or basically break the family. Okay. But you can see, just to explain this, if we were to put this into practice, so the row here is looking for, so the formula I should say is looking for nominal diameter 1 and nominal diameter 2. So in this family, if we come down here, nominal diameter 1 is 12.8 and nominal diameter 2 is 15 there, okay? So in this CSV file, in the lookup table file, it looks for those two values in that order. So you can see in this row it's found 12.8 and 15, okay? So it's found a match. So then it's going to come and report in that, from that row, that corresponding cell value of SL there for sleeve length. So it's going to come across here to SL, find 14.9 and push that value into the family there, okay? So hopefully you're starting to get a bit of an idea of how these formulas work. It is a little bit different to how some of the other formulas and the syntax and conventions of the formulas work in other areas of Revit, and particularly in other normal family formulas in Revit. It is somewhat a bit backwards, it seems, okay, the way that it's kind of working, where you're sort of like looking for a value at the end of this formula, then coming back and it's, you know, referencing that value, then giving it a default. It's kind of on top of itself. So it can be a little bit confusing, but once you've used them a few times, they start to become and make a bit more sense, okay? All right. So here's just another quick graphic here just to, I guess, emphasize it a bit more, okay, and hopefully explain and graphically sort of show you a bit more how it's working. So let me explain this again, okay? So this example is one that's looking for multiple lookup values, not just one value, okay? So if you look at the formula here, it's looking for nominal diameter 1 and nominal diameter 2. Okay, so this is the family types, and this is the CSV lookup table graphic here. So if nominal diameter 1, if these two match, okay, so nominal diameter 1 is 3 there and is 3 here, okay, and if the nominal diameter 2 is 2 here and 2 there, so it's found a match in that order, 3 and 2, 3 and 2, then report that or give feed that value into that family, okay, so feed that family here, use this value for SB, which is the socket bottom to socket bottom run. Okay, so it's just been abbreviated there again, as I said, and then it's reporting that value. Okay, so 4.43 inches, or written in fractional terms there. Okay. All right. So let's have a quick look at this in practice inside of Revit. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back up and just show you where you can find these particular areas. Okay, just to give you the basic overview of how you can start to create these. Okay, so I've just got some example pipe types here. Okay, all right. If I jump into and edit one of these elements, okay. Alright, so this is my pipe elbow here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and edit my, click onto my family types. Okay. So we can see we've got a lookup table name here. Okay. Alright. Notice that you've got in this window, as I mentioned, this is Revit 2015 that I've got open here. So this is obviously from 2014 onwards, as I said, you can embed the lookup table in. So we've got this lookup table button here, so we can manage lookup tables, and we can see that embedded in here or imported in here is that corresponding lookup table. Okay, so it is embedded into the family itself. So it still has to be that external CSV file, but it's just embedded into the family. Okay, then the Revit still has to have this formula or this parameter to reference that that correct CSV file. It's just that you don't have to have that CSV file sitting in a separate location. It's just sitting inside the family. Okay. Inside that manage, as I mentioned, you've got your import and export, so you can import in another CSV file over the top. Okay. or you can export this one out and save it as a CSV file at your end so that you can edit it, okay, inside of Excel, and then load it back in, okay. All right, so here is the lookup table name, okay. So then you've got some examples of this lookup table being referenced in formulas now for certain parameters here. So the whole thing behind this is that it's actually using these lookup tables to automate the sizing of these parameters, and in turn automate your working and your modeling of pipe types in this instance, to automate the process of the sizing basically, and to not only that but to also sort of control the sizing as well, so that you can't have users put in any sort of values here. These sizes will be controlled by the sizes that are in that lookup table, and they might be referring to the spec of a pipe material or a manufacturer that says, this pipe type comes in this material, comes in only these sizes. So it's a way that you can sort of control those sizes, okay. These sizes will then work along with the pipe type sizes that are set in your Revit project as well, okay. So I'm sure if you're watching this webinar, you're obviously familiar with your pipe types and setting them up with your routing preferences inside of Revit. So we're not going to go into that in this webinar, but just be aware that these sizes that are being referenced in this lookup table, in terms of when we're talking about pipe fittings, will generally correspond to the sizes that are set in your pipe types. Okay. So you can see here that this fitting outside diameter is looking for, okay, if we go to the end of this formula here, it's looking for nominal diameter. So whatever the nominal diameter is at any time, if it's 40, it'll go to the CSV file and look for 40 in the lookup value column, the first column. If it finds 40, if it matches that value, then it's going to report the value from that FOD column in the lookup table. If it doesn't find a match, then this is the default value to add, and you can see here this is actually a formula in itself, 1.02 times the nominal diameter plus 10.6. Okay. So I'll jump back out of that one. If I jump into one of these transitions here, okay, edit that family. Okay, so this is a Victolic transition for the IPS range of pipe. Okay. So you can see here that there's a little bit more complication going on here. There's if you break it down though, it looks like a whole lot of complicated formulas, but if you break it down, these are pretty much just all formulas that are referencing that lookup table, and they're referencing different lookup columns. So when you open up a lookup table, okay, you can have any number of columns here after the lookup value. Okay, any number of columns here you can use in the one lookup table. So and then any formula can then reference any of these values basically to report basically. So back to there. So there's an example here of the lookup table looking for two values. So it's looking for nominal diameter and nominal diameter 2. So it needs to match those two parameters. Okay. So it's looking for nominal diameter here and nominal diameter 2, and if it finds those matches, then it will report the value coming from that EE column. If not, then it'll put it to 0. So again, it's a bit of a check one there to say that if it doesn't match anything, then it's going to pretty much break. So if it does break, then that tells you for the way these families are working is that something has to be fixed in the lookup table, and it just means that it always needs to be using the lookup table. There's no instance in this where they want to for the sizes to be controlled by anything other than the sizes in that lookup table. Okay. And then just one more example here of multiple values in lookup tables. Okay. So if I edit this family here, this is another pipe type here. Okay. Okay, so I've got a transition here. Okay. So again, this is an example where there is no lookup table name parameter as such. This is just the lookup table. The CSV file is named in the formula itself. So that there is the name of the lookup table of the CSV file without the .csv. Okay. So inside of that CSV file, okay, for this sleeve radius 2 parameter, it's looking for nominal diameter 1. It's looking for nominal diameter 2. And then if it finds a match for those two, so if it finds a match of 32 for nominal, for nominal diameter, if it finds a match of 65 and 40, okay, for nominal diameter 1 and nominal diameter 2, if it finds that match, then it's going to report the value of that SR2 value there. If not, again, it's going to report 0. Okay, so there's quite flexible what you can do with these formulas. You can with this example, you can make it as a bit of a check so that it will actually break and put it to a value of 0 if it doesn't find the value, or you can have a bit of a backup fail-safe default value there if you just want if you still want the family to work even if it doesn't find a corresponding match in the lookup table itself. Okay. All right, so back to our presentation here. So just some things to note. And just recapping what we've been talking about, okay? So the order of the lookup value column is important, okay? So the order of that first lookup value column, it has to be in the first spot after the reference column, okay? So it has to be that first column. That is always going to be the lookup value column. That is the formula that's inside of the family is going to be looking for that first column, so that order is important, okay? The order after those lookup value columns is then not important, okay? So the order of those lookup columns, you can have as many as you want. That doesn't really matter the order. Once you get to those lookup columns, it's looking for it is looking for the matching name there that's in the actual formula, okay? So the default, if not found, can be a number, or it can be a parameter coming from the family itself, or it can be a complete formula in itself, as I mentioned. Okay, so you've got a bit of flexibility there. Okay, the lookup tables can be used for other elements. Okay, so this is a good point here. What I've been showing you is being specific to pipe, and it's the same concept for conduit fittings. Okay. But it's important to note that these lookup tables, they can be used for elements outside of those. Okay, so you can use it for other elements. Some examples, it might be, sizing structural elements, sizing structural beams, sizing structural angles. You can use it to, size other elements in other families. So it's not just restricted to the Revit MEP pipe fittings. Okay, it can be used elsewhere. So I guess the key point there is to maybe take these philosophies and concepts away and get creative with it and see if you can make it work in elsewhere. You might have a situation where you want to be able to use this somewhere else. Hopefully you can take this this information away and apply it in some other areas. Okay. All right. I might just quickly see if we've got some questions here before we close down the seminar for today. I'm sure there's probably a few there. We might not be able to get to all these questions. As I said, though, if the questions that we can't get to, we can certainly come back to you at a later date, okay, and try and answer those for you. Okay. Okay, so on completion, will this video be available for future reference? Yeah, so this webinar is being recorded and should be available on our YouTube channel, on our A2K Technologies YouTube channel. So you should get some notification from attending this webinar where to find that. But if you just go to YouTube and search for A2K Technologies, you'll find a whole knowledge base of webinars and video work instructions from A2K that you can use for your own reference. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any other questions at this stage, so hopefully that hasn't totally confused you. Hopefully you can take a bit about the way those formulas work and the ordering that's happening, and apply it to and actually start creating some of your own lookup tables. Okay, so we've just covered the basics, I guess, there of lookup tables, just a starting point, how you can actually apply them. Okay. If you want some further information, or if you need further assistance, we can certainly help, or we're certainly happy to support you. So you can get in touch with us through the numbers on this next slide. Okay. So you can just email solutions at A2K Technologies, or you can call the 1-800 number there as well to get in touch with us if you need some more information. So with that, I'll say thank you for attending. I hope you've been able to get some information out of that, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.